Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Good, thank you. So I think it'd be awesome. Is it just you in this session?
I
Or
guess
is
so.
there another person? Okay, just you? Okay, so we have about 4 BISC kids here with lots of questions for you, but if you wouldn't mind just kind of introducing yourself and what you do, that'd be awesome.
Sure. So I'm Daniel Infacino. I'm Vice President of actually corporate finance at Abbott Laboratories. For those of you who haven't heard of Abbott, I'm hoping all of you have since the COVID pandemic, but we're, right now primarily known for making diagnostic assays, especially around the COVID-19 disease. But we also have other businesses, which include medical devices, so stents, electrophysiology. We make infant formula. We have outside the U.S. Branded generics pharmaceutical business, and we also have a diabetes care business, which has our Libre FreeCell Libre sensor. I did say I'm in corporate finance, so I've made a career transition since I've left Marquette. But I did start in the science side of Abbott about 21 years ago when I graduated in '99. So when I came into Abbott, I started in their diagnostics business. So I was actually responsible for immunoassays in the infectious disease space for congenitals and also for cancer markers. My first role here started within the lab testing, that's quality testing of the diagnostic tests. But because of the skill set I gained with my biomedical sciences degree, I quickly moved into the tech support side, which is basically improving our products once they're on market to be more specific, to be more sensitive, and to be better, better performing in the hands of our customer and at the end for the patients we serve. So it's a little bit on my background. I guess I'd open it up to questions to have more of a discussion with you guys.
Great, thanks. Anybody have a question?
So what made you decide to make the transition from being in the lab to going into finance? Those are very different in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually a slow transition over time. So my original intent when I came in a couple years after working at Abbott, I went back and got my master's in business administration, was to basically rise through the ranks essentially on the manufacturing and tech support side with that business degree that helps me run an organization better. But what ended up happening was, as soon as I got my MBA, I was hired into an organization that evaluated R&D projects across all of our businesses and did the financial evaluation on whether or not that was going to be a good opportunity for our company or not. And what that role basically allowed me to do was combine kind of the science background of saying, okay, what's the technology? What does it mean to a patient? How does it compare to our competitors out there? And do then the financial analysis behind it and understand how much, what is the sales potential? What's the profit potential for the company? So it really combined both those together. And then it turns out I was really good at finance and kind of just kept going down that track until I became more and more dedicated within our corporate finance organization. So it's kind of a weird track, and I am the oddball in the group in corporate finance since I'm the only one without a traditional finance degree.
Very cool, thank you. Anyone else have any? Go for it. Yeah.
Do you still see a lot of science material on the work that you do now?
Yes, a lot. So when being an executive now in the company, when I sit down with our talk with our businesses, we're constantly reviewing the technologies that they have on market. We're reviewing what our competition's releasing on the market, and talking about our innovation and R&D pipelines of understanding what does it mean. I'm kind of in a unique position compared to a lot of people in finance because I actually understand what scientists are saying when they're talking. I also started applying kind of a statistical methodology to finance here at Abbott, which hasn't really happened ever. So it's kind of using, finance likes to have very pure, this is our sales, this is what's going to cost, this is our profit. The world's never certain and every forecast is always wrong. And what kind of taking that science methodology and applying it to the finance world allows us a lot more thorough analysis on our financials.
Awesome, thanks so much. Any other questions, guys? Not really? Okay, I think it'd be great if you could talk about what kind of led you to this path? Did you come in freshman year thinking, oh, I was interested in this, or how did you get there?
So when I started at Marquette freshman year, I don't even think the school existed. I think I'm part of the second graduating class. So when I went into the biomedical sciences program, when I started at Marquette, I wanted to go back to my plan was to go to med school. Working through kind of the different classes, thinking maybe med school wasn't going to be the right path for me. Started looking at PT school, pharmacy school, PA school. And then by my time my senior year rolled around, I looked at my college debt situation and said, before I go and do any further education, I've got to probably pay some of this down and, go work in industry. And that's when I started at Abbott. So it was never really I really didn't have a pure intention kind of by the time I got, done near graduation, other than, possibly going back to school. But turns out I did, but it was the MBA rather than going to like a med school.
Gotcha. Great. Thanks. Any other questions? Oh, go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, the one thing I'll add to that is that what was really kind of eye-opening to me was I thought with my degree, kind of graduating, not going on to like a more professional school or med school or anything like that, was I thought I'd be hard pressed to find a job. Looking back on it now, there are tons of companies, tons of opportunity within industry for degrees like what you guys are going to have when you graduate. And I think, if it's something that you guys want to explore, it's not like there's not these just one-off companies that do this. Everything from biotech startups all the way up through large companies like Abbott are, constantly looking for people. We hire scientists every day. We've got a whole, massive team of scientists, everything from PhDs down to just bachelor's degrees. So there's a lot of opportunity out there besides going on to professional school.
Sure. Was there certain classes in BISC that you were like, oh, this really helped me out? Or was it just helpful having that science background knowledge?
A little bit of both. I think I'm more of a hands-on person. So between gross anatomy and regular anatomy, I excelled in gross anatomy because I was able to get my hands on things and kind of learn that way versus just memorizing. But when some of the classes that really I didn't think would be useful when I was in school that turned out to be extremely useful post-school or in professional life. One was statistics. Everything could be, it turns out, statistics gets used heavily in the professional world. And, trying to understand, probably the other ones, I can't remember, it wasn't in the class. I took a logic class there, which I don't remember exact reason why I took it when I was there. It was one of my electives, but that actually really, really helped me when we got into the professional world. But just the general science background, knowing how immunology worked, helped me for my diagnostics career, kind of, knowing, the other classes between physiology and histology, all helped when I worked and supported with all the other businesses that we have, because our company touches on all those things. So it's, there's nothing that I do in my career, I would say, that I exactly learned while I was in college, but the skill sets I got in college helped me be successful when I had to learn it on the job.
Okay, great. That makes sense. Well, I think that about wraps up this session, unless you guys have any final questions or thoughts you'd want to share. No, not too much. Okay. I really appreciate you coming on and answering all these questions, though. And I hope you have a good night.
Have a good evening.
And I think the next group will join pretty soon, too. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Thanks so much.
Daniel Facino. I'm Vice President of Corporate Finance with a Biomedical Sciences degree from about 21 years ago. So ignore my title for now because that's a weird path that I kind of went down. But when I graduated in '99 from the Biomedical Sciences program, I started at Abbott Laboratories, where I still work today, in our diagnostics businesses. So if you haven't heard of Abbott, which I hope you did have with the COVID-19 pandemic, is that one of our businesses makes diagnostic tests that looks for antibodies, antigen, cancer markers, all within blood and other bodily fluids. And basically those are distributed all around the world. I started in that business on the testing lab side, so essentially quality testing our products before they went into market. Shortly beyond that, I moved into the technical support side, where I was basically improving our products once they were on market. And then after that, I kind of started my transition into the finance world, more looking at R&D programs. So looking at what our next technologies were, not only from a science perspective, but also from a financial evaluation perspective. So that's kind of my career, my journey, and then everything beyond that's kind of more dedicated to finance, which I'm sure may not be as interesting to you guys as kind of the earlier parts of my career. But what questions do you have?
Did you just get a BISC degree, or did you also have like a business degree or something?
So between 2003 and 2005, so about 3 years into my professional career, I went back and did get my master's in business administration. So that kind of helped me move into more on the finance side. But honestly, I probably would not be as successful as I am in the finance side of the business without the science background. It's kind of made, I'm the oddball right now in the finance organization, where I'm not traditionally trained finance, but I apply kind of the skills a scientist, or, like basically a scientist would use within the finance world. So that's kind of really, it makes me unique here, and that uniqueness is actually working out pretty well.
What was it about the finance side that drew you away from the science side?
Turns out I was really good at it. Really, that was it. It was just more and more opportunities opened up on the finance side pretty quickly as kind of I started deploying my skill set in that area, and then just kind of things kind of snowballed from there.
I kind of know a little bit of your background, but
Yep.
What I think is really beneficial for our students is that so many come to biomedical sciences with dreams and aspirations of becoming a doctor.
Yep.
And one of the things that is growing is that not like the number of students graduating and going on into industry is growing each year. And we're finding a lot of students are not choosing to pursue healthcare professions. I know that you did want to be a doctor at one point, but like, can you talk about that journey and how you got there, and the experiences you had as an undergrad?
Sure, happy to. So when I started at Marquette, my original intention was to go to med school. Got through a couple years. Basically, as the biomedical program was started thinking about it, started getting exposure to other schools such as PT school, PA school, and all those were interesting, and kind of went through, I want to go do that, and then decided, no, I'm going to go think about something different. By the time my senior year rolled around, I was kind of looking at my college debt going, that's too much. I'm not sure if I want to go on and do more education at this time, or if I want to, try to pay down some of that debt before I kind of moved on and possibly went on to one of those more graduate level programs. So I was in the wanted to be a doctor when I started at school. And honestly, when I graduated, I really didn't know jobs like my first 7 years at Abbott really existed out there. Looking back on it now, I am shocked actually the amount of companies, the amount of jobs that are out there for people with a biomedical sciences background, any general science background. To tell you the truth, it doesn't have to be a PhD. The team that I worked on were all bachelor's degree background people who are basically making a difference to our products and our patients every day by just improving our products. And it's not just, my company. There's, I can name off a laundry list of companies out there that would probably have the exact same opportunities for people who choose not to go on to like a med school, and they want to go out with their degree and basically enter the professional workforce and do something different. Even right now, I think of kind of like all the COVID tests that we started producing. We hired a mass amount of people who had to have an immunology background, just enough. I'll call it just enough to be dangerous, and we'll teach them the platform, the technology that we have available to us. But all those tests had to be developed from scratch, and it wasn't all PhDs doing it. It was a team of every type of different science background and degree level.
I think that's so huge. It's just growing and growing, and so many of our graduates are just excelling in the biotech and pharmaceutical industries. It's amazing.
I mean, there's some. I have a guy that a colleague I used to work with. He went and started his own biomedical startup. I mean, he's making unique surgical equipment out there. He's a CEO, and he's really hoping he gets bought out by a big company at some point, so he can retire probably at like the age of 40. But I mean, there's just tons of opportunity out there. You know, whether big companies or or if you want to get lost in a big corporate world, there's small companies with 30 people. It turns out there's one like. I had a recruiter call me about 2 months ago, and it turns out there's one like 10 miles from my house that I didn't even know existed out there. So they're all over the place.
So how did you go about finding that first job after graduation? How did you find this job?
My first job? For me, it was a little more of luck. Abbott was in a mass hiring mode at the time, so it was. I remember my interview process. It was like rapid fire interview, kind of more like speed dating. You went down, you sat down, 3 managers interviewed you at the exact same time, and you spent like half a day doing that. It was just like mentally exhausting. Those days are kind of done. It was due to a couple issues where we had to mass hire a bunch of people. But to find jobs like this, it's really LinkedIn is probably the primary tool I would say you want to leverage. Find people like me, connect with them. Learn more about the different companies that are out there, and then check their job boards for opportunities. And don't let, if the job says it's looking for a certain particular background or something, don't let that stop you, because for entry level positions, no one's going to graduate from school with the exact skill set or experience that companies like ours need. It's really, how do you take what you learned and that tool set that it gives you, and how do you use it once you're in the role? And basically, being successful within that role. It probably won't like me saying this, but for when I look back at college, college was basically giving me tools. It was never really preparing me one-on-one for exactly what I was going to be doing in my professional career. But it's how do you actually use what you learn, use that kind of critical thinking, use that science background that you have, and expand upon it once you get into the professional job.
Are there internships, or like would you recommend getting an internship in in any for any biotech company whenever while we're in school, so that we can kind of learn how to do that at an earlier age?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of internships, not only within our company, but across the industries. So those are opportunities. With the biomedical sciences background, I would be looking for things that are either tech support, technical support related, not tech support like calling on the phone, but more the technical support of the actual product itself. I'd be looking at supply chain. Your degrees are going to get you in a really prime position for like supply chain roles of managing managing the I don't want to say ingredients, but components that go into products. A lot of the stuff that I was dealing with early in my career were biologicals. It was, goat serum to get the goat antibodies. It was, positive plasma from patients out there. You have to kind of know what you're buying, know what you're ordering, know what the supply chain is. You got to, you'll learn kind of what temperatures has got to be stored at, making sure you got the right cold chain supply, all that stuff. You guys all have that kind of that fundamental foundation of skills there. So it's not just I need to find a very unique job. I mean, engineering roles would actually even be a decent fit for biomedical science students. So there's, I would say, in the world that we live in now, just basically apply to anything that sounds interesting and see what happens. Kind of like see what sticks to the wall.
Are there any kind of titles in particular that you think an entry-level person should be applying to?
I'm sorry, one more time with that question. Sorry.
What kind of job titles should they be looking for?
Titles like scientists, titles like product specialists, supply chain analysts, things like that would be probably the right entry level titles to be looking for. With all honesty, coming straight out of college, manager roles just aren't going to be in the cards. You have to kind of get call it 3 to 4 years of experience to start, having considerations for management roles, probably closer to 5, and that they'll be looking for very specific, very experiences beyond what you would get like in an internship.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
All right, your next group is here. So if you want to start by introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about what you do, that'd be great.
Sure. So I'm Daniel Casino. I'm Vice President of Corporate Finance at Abbott Laboratories. I've kind of been watching people's faces, and I say that why is somebody from finance talking to biomedical science students? But I did start my career here within my current company, which is Abbott Laboratories, on the sciences side. I graduated from the biomedical sciences program back in '99. When I came into Abbott, my first role was really looking at diagnostic assays for infectious disease and also cancer markers, and started shortly more quality testing of those products before they were released onto the market, and then quickly moved to technical support side, where spent more time improving those products, making them more specific, more sensitive, making them better performing in the hands of our customers and better outcomes for our patients. I spent about 5 years doing that before I started kind of my transition onto the finance side of the company. So I guess I'll open it up for questions. It's a little like Groundhog's Day. I think I've told that story like 5 times now.
Yeah, we apologize for that part, but thank you for doing that again for us who haven't
No
heard
problem.
yet. Any questions from you guys? All right, well, I had a question. I was wondering, how did you start off knowing that you didn't want to go to a clinical route, or was that kind of something that you just fell into?
It was a transition over time when I was getting my degree. I started at Marquette thinking I was going to be a doctor and go down to med school. Started getting more exposure into kind of PT school, PA school, pharmacy school. All those sounded interesting at one point in time. By the time, my senior year rolled around, I was looking at graduating, looking at a decent amount of student debt, and said, now is not the right time for me personally to, go on to that more clinical type higher education. Started looking for more industry jobs, or I guess, my intention was to work for a few years, then go back. I ended up working for a few years and then going back, but I ended up going to get a master's in business administration instead of on the med school. And then, been within my own company today now for 21 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Did you pick up most of the skills that you use in the finance part of your job while getting your MBA, or how did you learn how to do like a lot of the finance aspects of your job coming from a BISC background?
Actually, it's the science background, it's the biomedical sciences background that's actually made me unique in the finance world. It's, it's a different way of thinking. It's the, the scientific kind of that intellectual curiosity that you have of what's the root cause, what makes something tick, what's the, applying different, statistical methodologies like you would if you're running a clinical study. All those skills that I gained kind of, getting my degree and then also within my sciences role, makes me unique in a good way within the finance world. And it's kind of worked out for my career at this point.
Yeah.
Does your day-to-day usually look the same, or does it vary a lot?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Does your day-to-day experience vary, or is it pretty much the same routine every day?
It's really staticky when you were talking. I'm still not picking it up.
Does your day-to-day change, or do you have the same schedule pretty much every day?
No, my day-to-day is every day is a new adventure for me within at least my current role. It was the same thing when I was in my earlier career in the sciences role. Is when you wake up in the morning, what kind of, I don't want to say crisis, but what new challenge kind of was going to land on your lap. From the sciences role perspective, I was, everything from, I don't know how much you know about diagnostic assays, but diagnostic assays use a bunch of different biologicals to basically run the test. So one of the things that one of my assays had was we were sourcing goat serum for antibodies out of New Zealand. And, never thought in my life would I ever have to worry about a goat herd dying, changing the type of antibodies that I was receiving, and kind of shifting my assay that I had to notify customers that they would see a shift on their, on their negative results as a result of a new, new goat antibody. I've had to work with lawyers in my career to basically, we have, rubella is pretty rare in the US with an IgM antibody. And we had one person that we were essentially sourcing that component for our product from. Turns out he went to prison. So we had to work with the lawyers to basically get legal clearance to, have him donate blood-based plasma while he was in prison. So it's, those are some of the unique things, but every day is a new adventure. I mean, even COVID-19 pandemic, we, at Abbott, we went, for those of you who haven't seen us, we're probably the largest manufacturer of COVID-19 tests right now. Is that we went into March last year wondering, from the finance side, managing kind of how are we going to manage our business as, people stop going to hospitals, people stop having medical procedures, to how do we get a bunch of tests ramped up that we've never produced a single one in our life before. So it's, we went one month it was kind of crisis mode of how do we manage to make sure the company's still around. Second month it was how do we manage the, the massive uptick of the tests that we have to produce for the world. It's interesting.
What advice would you give to someone who maybe is looking for a job at Abbott? Where can they start?
Think beyond just kind of, your comfort zone. You're not going to find kind of that clinical role within Abbott. You'll probably see job descriptions that say, clinical specialist, and those are the type of roles that you could possibly get, but they're going to be harder to get just because they're looking for someone with more experience. I'd be looking for roles that's called are like product specialists. Those are the roles that when you get into the company that you're basically working with the product itself and either improving it or responsible for kind of managing its life cycle. And when I say its life cycle, it's whether it's a new product and you got to kind of make it better once it's on market, because we're always talking about we're always thinking continuous improvement. Or as a product ages, especially in biologicals, it gets harder and harder to manage because it's just the diversity of ingredients gets challenging. So it's those types of roles are, our company are looking for people to kind of run those types of roles. So, don't let if you don't feel like you're strong in immunology, don't let a, immunology role kind of scare you away from it. Immunology definitely wasn't my best class when I was in school, but it's, I excelled in it here at work. So it's kind of, take a chance.
Danielle.
Hello.
Thanks for being here tonight.
No worries. How are you guys this evening?
I think we're doing well. Could you just, I know you've done it a couple times now, explain who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I'm Daniel Pacino, class of 99. I think I was the second graduating class. I always have to have Diane confirm whether or not I was the first or second. So I'm going to give you my title and job, but that's kind of not my story. So I'm Vice President of Corporate Finance at Abbott Laboratories. But even though I work in finance, I actually started my career here at Abbott within the sciences role for our diagnostics products business. So for those of you who are unaware, which I hope everyone's aware of us at this point, we're one of the largest manufacturers and leading companies for manufacturing diagnostic tests. Most popularly, you probably see is our COVID tests, everything from the ID Now that was unboxed at the White House to the most recent release of our Binex at-home test that you could probably get on the shelf at Walgreens down on 16th in Wisconsin, if that's still there. So, a little bit of, kind of my background, how I got into Abbott, or what I did at Abbott is that after I graduated with the biomedical sciences degree, at that time in my life, I decided that I wanted to kind of stop with the education and get into the professional world. I kind of looked at my student debt, said I was carrying too much. My original intention was to go to med school. I was kind of confused on what, professional clinical school I wanted to go to. So I figured I would go work for a few years, pay down some debt, and then figure out what degree I wanted to go get next. So I joined Abbott. I joined Abbott as a product specialist. I was responsible for infectious disease and cancer marker diagnostic assays. My first actual job was within the quality lab of testing products before they were released onto the market. Quickly beyond that, I expanded into the technical support side, so that's more of improving our products once they're on market, and then also problem solving production problems due to it being a biological, and ensuring that we can keep a supply of product on the market. During that time, I actually did go back to get a professional education or a higher education, but I decided to get a master's in business administration, and that kind of started my journey into the corporate finance side of the world. So that's a little bit of my background. I'll open it up to questions.
So how did you use your BISC degree? I know especially as biomedical sciences isn't really a major at very many schools, especially. So how did you use that originally starting out, and do you still use it today?
Sure. For me, it was a skill set and a tool set that helped make me successful in my first couple of jobs, especially on the science side. There's probably, from my experiences, there's nothing that exactly would prepare anyone from the professional world that you get, kind of from the educational world, because you got to learn the platforms, you got to learn the products, you got to kind of learn how those things operate. But it's the critical thinking, it's the problem solving, it's the just the general science background that makes you successful when you understanding how things work. The other thing is kind of I always found that most people who went into the kind of the sciences route always were kind of more of the what makes things tick type people, kind of a little more towards engineerish, of understanding why things are the way they are. If you're interested in the clinical route, is because you want to help people, and helping people is typically getting them through kind of different diseases that they may be progressing through. But the diagnosis phase of that is kind of the part that I always found was the most fun, and that's no different than diagnosing a problem with a product or a problem with a different testing procedure. And that skill set not only did me good for me in the beginning of my career, but I actually deploy it every day still in my current role, even though I'm in a finance role. That type of skill, background, education, all makes me kind of unique in the corporate finance space, where it's kind of excelled my career, because I'm not the traditionally trained finance person. I'm looking at things from a different light. I can understand when our scientists come in and talk to us about the products. I spent time working at Sinai Samaritan Hospital while I was getting my education. And, a lot of times I can picture usually a patient face to the disease that we're trying to solve for. So it's definitely a different, you guys would have a different mindset, a different, I'll call it an advantage over other people with these types of backgrounds, especially the uniqueness that Marquette has with kind of this degree.
Yeah, I bet your background is much different than other people, especially knowing some of the business students here.
Yeah, you should have seen the look on my CFO's face when I told him that I had gross anatomy and I've dissected the human body. kind of freaked them out a little bit, I think.
I bet.
Did you feel like at any point, like when you switched into this sector from BISC, if you even want to call it switching necessarily, that like some of the lack of business side was ever challenging to get into, or did you go back to get an MBA on top of that to advance through the company you're at? And can you just kind of talk about that? Because that's something I've looked at sometimes, and
yep.
It's always a little daunting, looking at the requirements on applications.
Yep. So I did get an MBA, but I got it after I started my MBA about 3 years after I started at Abbott. So I was still in the sciences side of the company when I was getting my MBA. But to tell you the truth, I was doing some of the business aspects before I even started my MBA. There's certain things that, the science world and business world kind of overlaps. You think of kind of supply chain management. Well, when you're a company, a biotech company like we are, a lot of your supply chain is biologicals. It's understanding the sciences behind it. You have to understand the incoming specifications associated with that. That's starting to venture you in. There's production planners or supply chain specialists. All those people that I know from those roles all had sciences background, and they kind of learned the business side of it as they went. For me, when I was doing the tech support side, not only was I solving the technical problems with the product, if we had a production lot failure, of finding the root cause and making sure it didn't occur again, but I was also looking at how do I ensure that we're making something as cost efficient as possible. How do I ensure that I get the most consistent financials out of that? And all that, like I said, I was doing that before I started even getting my MBA. What drove me to get my MBA is it turned out I was really good at the financial piece of it. And I figured, they kept pulling me more and more into it. And I figured, I need to get the education now in order to continue up the ranks of the company through that pathway. And that was the kind of once I did that, is kind of like, then I started becoming more and more dedicated to finance as my career went on. But I even did a transition role after I left the diagnostics business, where I did a more of a corporate role where it was a little more unique, but it was evaluating our R&D, so our next gen innovations. And not only evaluating it from a technical scientific perspective, but also doing the financial valuations on it. So it was a good hybrid and blend of both the MBA and the biomedical sciences degree. And there's a lot of people out there that actually have both degrees within our company.
Sure.
A lot of PhDs with MBAs too.
I'm just curious, what is probably, what do you think is Abbott's most unique or the most cool product that you have out right now? I know obviously the COVID tests are the most relevant, but is there any product that you are particularly happy about or proud of?
There's a few of them. I'll start with, are you familiar with Freestyle Libre?
Freestyle what?
It's a Freestyle Libre. It's a device for diabetes. For those of you, if you know of anyone who has diabetes, the traditional way of doing things is you prick your finger, you put your blood on a strip, and you put it in a meter. What we've developed is essentially a patch that you wear on your arm that does the exact same type of readings without having to prick your fingers. And it's about the size, a little bit over the size of a quarter that you wear on the back of your arm right here. And it's really changed the lives of people living with diabetes, because one, you don't have to prick your finger anymore. And for anyone who's done it over a period of time or seen people who've done it over a period of time, your fingers eventually get calloused and you move from finger to finger and you're drawing blood essentially 3 times a day. But the other thing that this device allows the patient to do is monitor their diabetes on a more frequent basis. The device now communicates to their phone Bluetooth, so it's constantly giving them their blood glucose levels in order for them to manage their disease state better, with better clinical outcomes when it's all said and done. And the beauty that we've been able to do with this device is that we released this device at a significantly low cost compared to other devices similar out there. So we made it affordable for the masses also, and we're very proud of that we set it up in a way that was, intended not to be this, this premium product that was out there that only, certain people can afford. This is a mass product that we ensured that was priced appropriately, that anyone who has diabetes can afford this product. We've got other products that, especially in our medical device spaces, that are just very unique technologies. We have a device called MitraClip for people who have mitral valve issues, and what it does is actually you route it in through the femoral artery up into the heart, and it clips the valve that's not working correctly, and makes it work more, perform better. So there's just a lot of products out there that are becoming minimally invasive. That's really, reducing people's time in the hospital and having a lot better clinical outcomes.
Wow, that's really incredible.
So, I mean, I would encourage you, look at our website and just kind of look all the products out there. And, you know, as you kind of see products that you find interesting, I would look at those, not only our company, but look at other companies, Medtronic, Boston Scientific, look at a Roche, Danaher, see what products they make, see what intrigues you. Then look at their jobs board and say, okay, what jobs do they have in there? Because if the product intrigues you, you'll love doing the job.